This is the Blaze the Lion podcast. I am your host, Blaze the Lion, Blaze Doctari. And as you've seen, most likely, for this entire month, this month of February, our theme has been relationships, masculine versus feminine energy. And that theme has intrigued many. Maybe it's caused some arguments in your home. Maybe it's brought you all closer together. Maybe you're single again because of this podcast. Hey, I don't take any responsibility for that. Regardless, we are here. All right. We are live every Tuesday on Facebook on the Blaze Line Podcast page, as well as on YouTube on the Blaze Line Podcast channel. All right. We are streaming in 33 countries. And for every episode you see here, the audio version is always available on your major streaming platforms, your Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, and such. Indeed, indeed. I always have to give a shout out to our sponsors. All right, we have Star Child Social for your digital marketing needs. Are you looking for branding? Are you looking for help with advertising? Are you looking for logo design, website design, or just an overall facelift for your company? Well, look no further. Go to starchildsocial.com and tell them that Blaze sent you. Indeed, indeed. If you've been listening to this pod and you're loving the movement and you want to get down with the team, you got you. You can go to anchor.fm/blaze the lion/support. And right there on that page, on that link, we have 3 tiers. They're also at the bottom of the screen, right here. All right. And you got options. All right. Who doesn't love options? So you got 3 options right there, from $1 to $5 to $10 monthly, and become a monthly contributor. All right. I'm not wearing it tonight, but we have the Blaze Line podcast tees that are out. They come in men's tees, women's tees, and also tank tops as well. And for the contributors, they also get access to upcoming webinars that we have planned on how to find your purpose. Have you found your purpose? Are you looking for your purpose? Are you confused? Should you leave this job? Should you leave this woman? Hmm.
What leaders to be talking about, Blaze?
Walking in your purpose is life changing. Take it from me. It's changed so much about me and myself and just the overall journey and direction of my life. So you get all those and more becoming a monthly contributor to the Blaze Online podcast. All right. So tonight's guest, this is episode 91. We're getting there. We're getting there. Episode 91. Tonight's guest is someone that I felt was necessary for the pod. Why? Well, I seem to attract so many women as guests to this pod. And I love hearing the women walking in their purpose, the women on fire, the women who are bold and unapologetic. I love that. But sometimes I got to rep for the fellas, right? Sometimes we need another perspective. I'm not even going to say a masculine perspective because we both carry both feminine and masculine, no matter what gender you are or gender that you claim.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt it was necessary to get someone who has experience on a professional level. And again, someone that the fellas can also relate to. Someone who, man, is also walking in his purpose. Someone who is going to be transparent and overall just be himself.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, indeed. So, without any further ado, let us welcome Dustin Brown to the pod. Welcome, my brother. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me, Blaze. I appreciate it. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, to start this off, I give my mini long winded introduction of my guest, but I always tell my guests feel free, for those who may not know, share a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I've been a therapist now for 8 years. Licensed in my field as well, licensed mental health counselor. I've worked with all populations from people in recovery, kids, adolescents, families, couples, which I know is probably very useful for tonight.
Mhm.
All that good stuff. So yeah, it's been a journey, man, but very very good one, very insightful one.
Mhm. And see right there, I already have so many questions, right? Uh, I'm ready to
Yeah, that's
dive in.
good.
Those listening, I hope you are ready as well. All right. So, Dustin, what brought you to this field? Was it always your plan, or was there a shift?
So for me, honestly, I recognized probably when I was like 13, 14 on the park with my friends or whatever, or at school and stuff. I would just have random occasions, people just come up and talk to me and talk
Mm,
for hours about stuff I didn't know people. It would be like, oh, I'm dating this person. This is going, like, okay. Thank you for telling me, I guess, But
right.
and then as I kind of got older, I realized like what kind of fields really kind of fostered that ability and that skill. I
Mm,
realized it was in the mental health field, and I've always had the idea of helping people also be in my mind as well. I love it through a medium I use now. I love like the therapy I can give to help people or see the change in a person or help them kind of realize everything about themselves. I love all that kind of good stuff, and it's been a lot of that, like just kind of realizing I guess my natural ability or natural kind of inclinations, and then using
yeah.
those things to kind of foster myself and develop myself more in this field. Yeah.
Mm. Before we dive into the masculine and the feminine, as someone also in the helping industry, um, professionally, how was your first experience with your first client?
Wow, that's a hard question. All right, so I guess you're talking about like as a professional when I was fully out of school and stuff, whatever, not
Yes, yes,
internship. I'll
right.
use it fully out of school. Anyway. Honestly, as a therapist, you kind of get thrown into the deep end a little bit. Um, people kind of have this idea of therapy being a thing where you go and you kind of sit in the office and you have a couch and stuff behind you, all that good stuff. But it takes time to get to that level, and it takes time to get to that kind of environment. Usually, most therapists kind of start doing outpatient stuff. So when I first started, the only job I can get at the time, or when I liked the most, was in West Palm Beach, and I'm based in Miami. So I would drive up, and I would travel
Mm,
around in my car and go to people at their homes and stuff, and do therapy inside houses, and that was
mm,
cool. It was definitely a different experience, right? You seen the person, the client, in their own environment. You seen them in their own space. There's some
yeah.
accountability there, but you also see what kind of like environmental triggers are there. You see kind of the stress of the environment. You see what can be an impediment to this person. If we work on this, okay, is this going to be impeded or blocked by this situation? And it can be a lot of times. So that was always kind of a part of the dynamic. That made it a little harder, but it was always kind of that thing. And my first client, I believe, was a DCF referral, which usually once you get in really any kind of therapy, they'll probably have a contract with DCF or the courts or state of Florida in some way, where you'll get referred clients who have like maybe don't have the resources for therapy but need it. And the state will kind of recognize that, right? Whether that's a parent or a child or whoever, and they'll put that person with a therapist. And I think my first client was a 19-year-old black woman, and she was trying to get her life together. And it was just a lot of just conversations. One of the things I always kind of realized too is people are very apprehensive at first, right? When they first get to know you and think and talk to you, they're like, "Oh, like I don't know if it's everything for me. I don't, like I said, the image is very stuffy in the office. You're talking, but kind of like once you kind of like break that shell and the person kind of see how you are as a person,
Yeah.
a lot of ability comes and the openness comes and that rapport comes, and then you kind of work with some real work. And that was cool. It was definitely an interesting experience, and eventually had to leave kind of sooner than later because it was West Palm Beach, Miami. So, but it was
Yeah.
definitely a good first experience. Though.
Mm. Very cool. Very cool. I've never spoken to a traveling therapist, so
Mm,
that's I've really only majority of my clientele has been on this virtual platform or on
mhm,
a virtual platform.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, so they can, so you don't really see them in their environment. They can hide, like a lot of things, and tell half truths
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So
Yeah, for sure.
interesting. That takes me back to so I've gotten therapy myself on maybe 2 or 3 different occasions,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about the second time that I went for therapy, um, we don't realize as the client, right? We don't realize how much we're hurting ourselves by not being honest,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because again, you're like, who is this person? And they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
judge me if I tell them
Mm-hmm.
everything and
Mm-hmm.
all that. So you
Mm-hmm.
tell them the cool part. So you tell them,
The fun part, yeah.
yeah. Have you ever experienced clients where they told you certain things, but then maybe after the fact or maybe months into it, you realize there was a whole lot more?
So that happens all the time, actually.
Okay.
Uh, but just full transparency also, because you mentioned it earlier when we first started the intro. I've been in therapy also, right? And to be honest, when you go to grad school, they kind of advocate for you to do therapy to get a feeling of how the client would feel in that scenario too. At the time for me, I did it because I was trying to get over a breakup, and I did have like a lot of insecurities and doubts in myself at the time, and I was trying to become the full realized version of me. I was still really young at the time. But then, like, and at first I did it. I was very scared of being super vulnerable and like letting all that out. And, do I share this part of myself? Do I put this out there?
Yeah.
So whenever I deal with somebody now, I try to like keep that in mind. You know what I mean? I don't want to judge you or your experience. I don't want to look at you and say, oh, I know what's going on with you. It's nothing like that. To me, it's never really a similar exact path. Everybody has a different situation, right? Whether that's a different circumstance here that changed something for you, or your mindset's different now than what it was before. It can be a bunch of things changing in that scenario, right? So it creates this kind of thing where I try to keep it open. So like, yes, like I've met people before, whatever, as a client, and the first few sessions they'll tell me everything I want to hear, or
Hmm.
they'll kind of focus on the positive, but like and try to either minimize or ignore the negative or the things that really kind of bother them, because they don't want to really fully be vulnerable, and that takes a lot of
Yeah.
courage, man. It's very hard in a situation to be like that with somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, like it took me a while to get used to that, right, and not take it honestly. At first, I think I took it personally. I was like, "What? Like I'm trying to help. I'm here,
Yeah, I'm
And
cool.
then,
Yeah.
and then as I got older, I realized like, yeah, it's not really about me, right? It's about that person and that experience and that
Mhm.
what they're going through. And as I kind of understood that more, it let me kind of just deal with that more, right? Like, I'll tell you honestly, dealing with like people in recovery usually, or people who are coming from recovery in a lot of ways. A lot of times, because of all the trauma they've been through, one or either the shame they feel too in their actions and what they did, they don't want to really disclose a lot of their behaviors or pasts or whatever to somebody, no matter who you are, right, therapist or not. So like I dealt with that a lot, trying to like kind of I want to say play detective, I don't feel like that, but like deducing certain things from our conversations and understanding like, okay, so this probably wasn't fully true, but then like not calling them on it like, oh, I got you, but more like, yeah, like let's discuss like what happened, like what did you feel you couldn't tell me this before, like what was going on, and they kind of understand from them what was really happening, right? A lot of times, like I said, it's about that shame and guilt. It's really hard to kind of open up your door, somebody we've been doing with something for X amount of years, time or whatever, and trying to understand it yourself, and then let somebody else in on that same thing about like why you feel the way you do, or why you do the things you do now. So it's definitely a thing you go through at first. I think all therapists go through it initially. But I think you kind of learn, right? Everybody thinks therapists have a perception too. Let me just say that also, right? When you think you get in therapy, you become a therapist, you think all of a sudden, oh, I'll be great and I'll change lives and I'll be able to get in people's heads and help them out a lot. And it's not like that either. You know what I mean? Like people expect a certain experience where they're getting a client who's already kind of fully formed and has an idea how to communicate. 9 times out of 10, people don't know how to communicate in general, right? Even some therapists. So you got to kind of like learn how to break that down first and kind of get that out, and then go from there.
Mm.
So yeah, it's definitely it's an experience. It's a learning, growing experience as you go through it. You always can get better. My mentor is my boss. She's been doing it for 20 years, and she always tells me how much she learned different things after year 10 or year 12 or year 15, and that's what you kind of go through. That's what it's always going to be. And I love that.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. always learning, right? So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter what industry really or what field, you can always learn. It's always learning. Absolutely.
1,000%.
Yeah. All right. So as we now dive into, which I felt we kind of already have been touching on the masculine and feminine. See,
Okay. Okay.
you were being slick there. Um, so for those watching or listening, break down from your perspective what exactly is masculine and feminine energy.
Hmm. Okay. So, from my perspective, uh, I think masculinity and feminine energy in that scenario are kind of. Hmm. I'll look at it like kind of like gender biased or gender based ideologies, right? In a lot of ways. To me, even the terms, right? Masculine, feminine, whatever, have a context to them. Um, Most people kind of think that way too when they engage in dating, when they engage in how they appear, how they project themselves. They think about that same kind of stuff as well, right? Men. One of the things I know I saw Yama say last week when she was talking, she had mentioned how you should be on your, like, you should dress your best if you go on somewhere or a new environment, right? Even as man or woman. And I do think in that scenario, right? Like if you look at a date, for example, what are you expected to do? Most days you aren't expected to go, whatever, in bummy clothes, right? As a man, you expected to go in like, nice clothes, whatever, nice jeans, nice pants, maybe a suit, maybe a tie, maybe a nice shirt, whatever, dress shirt. Look
Mhm.
your best in that situation, right? Project a very confident kind of almost assertive kind of image to the woman in that scenario, right? What women expect you to do in that situation? Wear dresses, put on makeup, look nice, whatever, right? Kind of engage in this idea of being more of a traditional quote unquote girly girl, if you use, let's use an antiquated term, right? And that kind of becomes the idea of what they're supposed to look like, as opposed to just being yourself. Because most of the time, we all know this, right? After the first few days, you're not getting no makeup all the time. You might get some sweatpants, whatever, in a ponytail, or you might get, a big t-shirt, whatever, and some
Oh
shorts, whatever, and
man.
shorts. So I think a lot of times, masculinity and femininity are really kind of, I won't say antiquated concepts, but yeah, kind of they're very old school concepts.
Mm.
I do think they're important because I do think people, more than they think they do, rely on those when they're partners, and even how they deal with their partners, relationships as well. But I also feel like at the same time, it could be better to kind of at some point maybe eliminate that the mentality, right? And you just be you. You know what I'm saying? If at times you're assertive or you're dominant, that's just you. And at times if you're more passive or submissive, then that's just you. It doesn't mean you're masculine or feminine. It just means who you are as a person.
Hmm. I can feel that.
Mm.
I can feel that. We do tend to be boxed in, right? We put labels on ourselves. Yeah.
I think even culturally that happens. Like I feel like I remember there was a study I had where I was reading at one point, whatever, doing research on back in the day when I was in grad school. And it talked a lot about the perception of women and men, and it broken down by color demographic, right? And they kind of even like set up what kind of demographics end up dating other demographics, right? Like it was evidence based study, very reputable, very good. And they talked about how more often than not, black men, Latin men are seen very dominant, are seen very like assertive slash aggressive, right? Even our stereotypes are based on the idea of us being a certain kind of way, right? The quote unquote mandingo ideology.
Mhm.
Um, where versus women who are more dominant usually are black or Latin also. But the funny part in the study is it talks about the actual propensity of you going for a partner like that. And it says most of the time that black men will probably go for either white women or Asian women because they're more submissive. The same thing with Latin men versus being with a black woman or a Latin woman because they are more assertive, more dominant as well. The same way, flip side, it's very common for a black woman to put a white dude or an Asian guy based on that they're more submissive or more kind of um, uh,
Hmm.
passive in their actions and behaviors versus what they might get from a black male or a Latin male. So it's interesting how all that plays out. Like I said, I think that's masculinity is a very or femininity in general. Like the idea of them, the concept of them, are still very prevalent for us now. That study was only I think what 8 years old, 9 years old, so it's not that far away.
Hmm. Hmm. And I'm trying to not get myself in trouble here.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. I got you. I'll cover up. You go
As
too far, I'll stop you.
as a whole, those that know me know that I know. All right. So that's my disclaimer. Okay. As a whole,
Yes.
the Latin women that I've dated,
Hmm.
I would say were pretty aggressive.
Hmm.
They were in their masculine energy bag majority of the time. They were they were kind of nuts. I mean, let's just be honest.
Put it out there, Blaze. Go ahead. Go ahead.
They
Yeah.
were crazy.
Yeah.
But at the time, as a black man,
Mm,
I was attracted to that, you
mm.
know? Not in all aspects, and I realized that later on. I said, "Oh, but you're crazy in everything." No, this ain't gonna work.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so that's interesting that Black and Latin people are they the study shows that they tend to be more aggressive and more direct and hmm.
So it's interesting how you put that, right? I don't know where you were raised, Blaze, exactly. I know you're Jamaican descent, but I don't know if you're raised in South Florida or not, or you were raised somewhere else.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I've done traveling around, but for the most part, South Florida, yeah.
So this might be more anecdotal, right? When I say this, and I'm gonna say next, but I do think this kind of has a basis to some degree. I feel like how to say this? Since I'm
Just say
bad
it.
in some ways, but whatever. We're gonna talk very openly now. There's a perception I think of South Florida that really is more based in just Miami only, right? Miami is the kind of the core of what South Florida is for everybody outside of South Florida.
Hmm.
So when you come here, or when you've been raised here to a degree, I think your interests kind of skew towards what you're stereotyped into kind of being, right? Which Miami's known for being a place of a lot of Latin cultures being here, right? A lot of
Hmm.
melting pots, a lot of different kind of mixes of things. And
Hmm.
I do think to a degree, whatever, that kind of gets kind of put in your head when you're growing up, whatever, or even like as an idea for fantasy, right? Like, oh, like damn, like, these Latin girls, whatever, they got the body like a black girl, but they're not exactly. It's certain different kind of situations in that they kind of go that realm, right? And it ends up kind of, I think, leading to an idea of, I won't say only sexualizing them, but I do think that becomes a very prevalent idea for a lot of black males. Is kind of like focused more on the sexual aspects of the Latin connection as opposed to the idea of just building with somebody in general. You know what I mean? Which I think, to your point, lends itself to what we're talking about, right? So, like, I'm going to assume the craziness you kind of alluded to earlier was in one place in particular that starts with a B, ends with an M. You know what I'm saying? I'm assuming that's what you meant. So when I talk about the bedroom kind of, place or whatever
Hmm. Hmm.
area. And that kind of, mentality where it's like, okay, this might be really fun, interesting, or different or new. But then we kind of end up losing sight of this person's actual person, right? Like, or treating them without, I guess, I won't say respect, but like maybe more focusing on the other aspects as opposed to the aspect of just connection, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. Again, I'm trying not to get in trouble. Not that I could ever get in trouble here as an alpha male. And,
Yeah. I guess you get some
but
reprimands or something. Yeah. I
but
understand.
definitely, I've seen a lot of Caribbean
Mm, mm,
women, whether black or Latin, and even white, because
hmm,
some Latin women consider themselves white,
hmm,
and that's a
hmm.
whole another.
Yes, that's a different conversation another
Yeah.
day.
But I've seen many Caribbean women, and you go to the parties, right? You go to their family functions,
Mm,
and they're loud,
mm,
or the mom is loud, or the grandfather, or and just the loud music
mm,
and the drinking and just all that, like a real um and they're taught many times to not hold back and to say
mm,
how they feel and to express themselves. And if you suppress how you feel, then you're weak and all of this. And then you may go to some other cultures, whether it may be the Asians or maybe the white or whatever, and it is more laid back, more calculated. And this isn't for everybody in every
Yeah.
range, because of course you have
Different
different.
situations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Where I know Latin women that are very shy and very quiet. So again, it is not a
Generalizing.
umbrella for everybody. Right. Um, and then even if you wanted to go into different pockets where you would say Latin people in South Florida versus Latin people in
New York or
New
California.
York are very different too. Right.
Well,
So
that's to me like when you, and so I like how you kind of brought it up, right? Because I think there's a lot of cultural basis for this also. I do think that people tend to go for partners who kind of, even though they don't know it or they do know it, have similar traits to either their family or people in their lives a lot of times, right? For men, a lot of times it's a. I'm not saying you want your mom, but I'm saying there are certain traits you might have seen in your mom that you find interesting in a partner going forward, right? Whether that's her um, outspokenness or her ability to laugh or her ability to have fun or her drive or her ambition in that scenario, right? You see those things, you're like, oh, damn, this is dope. The issue with that is, how to say this, there is a built-in differential respect factor to your parents, right? Like that you have as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
But now imagine you have somebody who acts like your mom in behavioral ways, but they're not your parent. Will you treat that person the same way as your mom? Probably not, right? And that person might elicit certain things out of you. It might be like, damn, like, all this kind of stuff that your mom might have made you feel at times, like whether that's unheard or kind of be insensitive. Because I know a lot of times, like to your point, my career backgrounds too, a lot of times men are taught not to talk about emotions, not to voice how they feel in that situation, right? To kind of keep it in, to be stoic more. That's kind of perpetuated by our parents' lives also, right? But it's the exact opposite of what you do in a relationship. So it creates these issues and dynamics that are already kind of built in that create a problem when it comes to like really dealing with somebody, right? And if you act like my mom, but I don't know how to communicate with you, like now we probably gonna fight. You know what I mean? Because I don't see you with the same respect level as my mom. My mom is like up here. You know what I mean? Like if we just started on date, you might be, a little bit lower than that until we got to get to the point of you being my girlfriend or whatever. But I might not give you the same kind of consideration, the same patience, the same understanding I give my mom when she want to kind of explain something to me, just because of that built-in respect factor. And I think that plays a role too. So I feel like there's so many things that, and then that wasn't even me talking about Miami in general, because I think Miami already has a skewed version of love that really perpetuates everybody here. It makes it really hard to like really have a consistent relationship in general. And that's just from my clientele to my anecdotally, my friends and stuff, whatever, the family members, whoever. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I've seen as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm glad you agree with that, man.
Yes. Man, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It is.
And man, just as you mentioned how we were raised, that does play a huge role, because the example you've seen of being ambitious, right, may have been someone who went to school and they got their degree and then they got their master's and they got their job and they worked their way up the ladder until now they are the CEO or whatever. And then someone else, the way that they saw somebody being ambitious was from the bottom. You got the little dime bags and you hustling and you respected in the streets and blah blah blah. And then somebody else, say like me, the way I see ambition is starting your own business and failing at that business, then starting a different business and failing at So all these different views and experiences of the same word,
Mm-hmm.
but it means different to you
Mm-hmm.
and then to me, you know what I mean? So
1,000%.
yeah.
And that's so common too. Like relationship wise in general, people talk in ways where they think they're being very clear.
Hmm.
They think they're portraying what they feel. They think I'm saying everything kind of to the T. But what you just kind of, alluded to, Blaze, was basically the idea of we all have our own image of things, though, right? So I might say as a partner, I need more affection from you. But for me, that might be, cuddling, whatever, when we sleep the whole night kind of thing, which I would never do, by the way. That's too hot. But anyway, is
Right.
that, or it could be like, you know, uh, just holding my hand in public more, something small
Mhm.
like that. You know what I'm saying? But people don't always
Mhm.
kind of talk about that, and they really like let it out. And then when they say I need more affection, the person says, "Okay, I got you." They just think, "All right, it's understood and it's done," as opposed to like kind of delving deeper into what that really meant for that person. And I
Mhm.
think that happens so many times, and that creates so many issues just from the basis of relationship, from foundation part, right? Because if we say we're on the same page, but then my foundation is based on the idea that I think you see what I see,
Yeah.
it's already an issue unless we really were consistently clear and really like broke it down to the nth level, right? Because people don't have patience for a lot of times either. One of the things
Mhm.
I hate seeing in general, or I hate hearing from women in general, is the idea I don't want small talk.
Mhm.
Okay, I understand that too, but at the same token, like every conversation you have is not going to be super insightful, super deep, super heavy. Sometimes you need to talk about basic stuff to understand like
Mhm.
where we're coming from, to understand like, okay, what you like, what do you like, what are your, and really kind of break it down to nitty gritty because that can be so informational, so helpful, and people don't realize
Mhm.
that all the time. You know what I mean? So stuff like that, I think, just happens all the time that people don't really think about or even see.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that same note, our perspective of what's right and wrong.
Mm,
And I may look at your actions as wrong.
mm,
And in reality, your actions are not wrong. They're
mm,
different.
mm,
But because in my experiences, those actions were deemed as wrong to what I saw, then, and it's like, so once you start healing, and I'm glad that you brought up earlier that you yourself have went to therapy,
mm,
right? So, how are you truly able to help and to heal others if you haven't done the work for yourself? Not saying that anyone has like arrived
mm,
and we're
mm,
100% healed. No,
mm,
you know what I mean? But yeah, you have to do the work.
mm,
And it took me going through a plethora of different experiences to realize, hey, they're not wrong. And what I'm arguing with them about, and I'm drilling them, trying to get them to see my side that I think is so clear,
mm,
guess what? They may never understand my side,
mm,
but
mm.
that's okay,
Yep.
right? It doesn't mean that they're stupid or they're
Nope.
slow or they're a
Yep.
bad person or I'm higher than them. It's just different. So it's many times we have to realize that things that we thought were facts truly aren't facts.
Mm.
It's not just the black and white or what's right or wrong. So that that right there, like in relationships, can be deal breakers and cause so many arguments where I remember I myself would try to drill home a certain point and I'm like, how did
Mm.
she not get this?
Mhm.
So let
Mhm.
me let me go and it's like,
Harder. Yep. That's not the right approach to it. Because honestly, to your point, once you kind of get to the point of trying to tell somebody, and it's not just you, anybody, if I get to the point of trying to tell you what I feel and you're not getting it, let's say I get frustrated, right? That person will start to kind of tune out too. If they start feeling like I'm annoyed because you're thinking I'm not getting it or I'm not trying to get it, and you kind of come at me with aggression, I'm gonna just shut down then. Or
yeah.
it's become a bigger fight in that scenario, right? And to your point, like I think a lot of times people don't really understand that. And I'm glad you used yourself as an example because I think men kind of fall in this category more. At least in my experiences, men tend to think a lot of times that like what they're doing is the correct way of doing things, relationship wise, period, right? If they have experience, whatever, if they've been through it or not, it don't really matter. a lot of the times what I've seen, at least in through my couples experience, but also anecdotally, is that men kind of tend to think, okay, I'm being clear, or I'm being direct, or I know what I need, or I'm communicating really well. And we don't really take into account like the other person's point of view or feelings or even understanding comprehension. And it's not a thing like you said about being dumber or whatever. It's about just understand somebody might understand stuff differently than you, right? Like somebody might I might talk to I'm gonna have a be a relationship with somebody whether it's talking in person and I can process what they're saying to me right in the moment. I can take it in, absorb it, whatever. Okay, process it and dish it back out to you. That person might need a day to just sit with what we just said and think about it and craft their reaction to me. You know what I'm saying? That's okay. And that's okay. That's something I learned through experience. And that's something like you also alluded to also was going through like the experience relationship wise, right? People tend to think or feel like so let me get another Miami concept I think is very prevalent as well, which it might be actually out of Miami too, but I think it's more Miami in general. This idea you'll find the one, right? You'll find this person that fully gets you, understands you, or fully like, you know, wants to be with you, only whatever, and there's some issues, it'll be easy. One of the things my mom used to tell me all the time was when I first started dating was it should be no drama, it should be easy. And I was like, I don't think that's fully right. You know what I mean? Yeah, it should be easy and then maybe the bigger things, yeah, maybe you have a similar idea, vision of things, right? But that don't mean the day-to-day stuff can be hard, right? And that's still work we got to put in that scenario too to make sure that works well. And it doesn't become a thing that, hinders our vision. Because the day-to-day can hinder the vision if it's too much. You know what I mean? So it definitely is something that I think becomes this idea that's perpetuated of like, okay, if we're in love, it should be easy. It should be nothing. We should get each other fully, whatever. But it's not really that easy. Even in with somebody, we still got to communicate. We still got to make the work, effort in, and do our thing to kind of build ourselves and really get better at communication, better understand each other, better at addressing wants versus needs. That's another thing. People tend to put the idea of wants and the idea of needs. That's not the case either. It's a very big difference between what I need from somebody and what I want from somebody. You know what I mean? But people don't take time to read that down either. They just say, well, I feel like it should be this way. And it's like, yeah, but is that a need for you or is that just something you want to happen? And if we can compromise, then that's also a key to that too, right? Which that's what I was saying. Like, and I'm attributing that mostly to men because I feel like that's what I've seen. Men have the harder time, like, kind of capitulating to the idea of compromise. It's more like, let me do what I want to do, and then we'll work to get what you want to get after that, which isn't how we fair a lot of times to the pair of sex or women in that scenario either. Or even other partners, if somebody else who's not in a traditional hetero relationship, the same thing can happen in that situation. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of stuff like that happens.
I want to dive a little bit into relationships and what you've experienced with your clients. You can change the names,
Of course,
to Bob and Lakeisha or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, between the wants and needs and the right and the wrong, and as you just mentioned, how men tend to put their desires first. Like, well, I'm the lead, well, I'm the head of the household or whatever. Let's deal with my stuff first, and then if time permits,
if we got no time, we'll go back. You know,
yeah.
No, it's interesting, right? Like one of the things I've learned just personally is how much you have to kind of be able to not be that way, right? Like, and when I say it, obviously, I'm not saying like it happens overnight, whatever. It takes time to learn that, right? It takes insights in yourself to understand that too. A lot of times, and even as men too, we do this a lot too. We break up with somebody, we think it was that person's fault, right? Like a lot of times, dudes will say, "Oh, she was crazy, bro." Like, but they don't talk about why she was acting crazy. Like, what caused that crazy behavior in the first place, right? Was it just she was crazy out of nowhere, or did y'all have a disagreement, or did you do something that was inappropriate, or did you, what I'm trying to say? And that becomes kind of the narrative a lot of times that we push, which is it was their fault as opposed to what we did in that scenario, right? In that situation. I think a lot of times, and I'll use my couples for this part, right? Like, So okay, keep in mind, right? By the time I have a couple come to us, whatever, it's usually they're in a deeper stage of despair. Right? It's not like we're at the beginning and it's still honeymoons and rainbows, whatever. It never happens, right? We rarely see that happen. It's usually after a few years of being together, or in some cases, 15 years of being together. Some other cases I had 30 years of being together, where it's like this is an issue for me, and they bring it up now in this environment, but they never brought it up for 25 years. They just kind of like let it sit in them, right? So now when I bring it up, I'm talking about it. Not only am I talking about it from a standpoint of like frustration and anger and resentment, I'm wanting it right now. I'm wanting it to be addressed right now. I'm wanting to get what I need from you right this instant, which is not fair to your partner, right? Like, imagine if you had a grudge you were holding for X amount of years, and now like you tell your person, now, okay, I need this from you, and you want to capitulate right then and there in the moment. Like, what the hell is that? Like, I wasn't doing that for how many years? I'm not going to do that now all of a sudden without some understanding of what's causing this or what's making you want to feel this way.
Yeah.
Because I think the other thing about men that happens a lot is we are like a lot more sensitive people want to allude to or really like kind of voice, right? I was having this talk with my frat bros the other day about like what they go through their relationships and stuff as well. And I think there's a built-in pressure as a man to be a provider.
Mhm.
And it's not even from outside sources. It's really internally, right? Like it's what you're taught growing up, and you kind of internalize that idea. I'm supposed to be this way. It's supposed to be me on top of that. It's supposed to be me handling the bills and stuff, and me making sure this is good, right? But that doesn't give us space for our emotional needs to get addressed. And what happens a lot of times is because we don't really address those things till later, it becomes now a bigger issue because it's been ignored for X amount of years, like I was saying earlier. So I'll use a client, a case I had, whatever, a few years ago. Um, let's say Rex and Tammy. Okay, let's say Rex and Tammy. So Rex was a 67-year-old male. Tammy was 70 years old, married 40 years, right? Rex had basically been cheating on Tammy for over the years, like an abundance of times, like a few times, whatever, right? Even when as far as like cheating on her or her sister, right? Tammy found all this out, by the way. Tammy found all this out eventually. She already knew all this kind of stuff eventually. And Rex was complaining about where they are now dynamically, which is basically like he has to capitulate a lot to what she wants, or even in a routine, day-to-day routine, a lot of stuff is kind of built on her schedule, right? And he feels dismissed, not prioritized, not valued because his ideas and thoughts are not being like catered to or understood or even like put into play. The issue with that is, and this is what I said before about the whole not being able to address things that you do as part of that or understand the whole situation. Tammy had arthritis, the arthritis, right? So in that scenario, should we cater to Rex's needs first, or should we make sure the person who has a disability gets her needs addressed first, right? Whether that's physically or mentally in that scenario, right? Um, in that situation also, did Rex ever really like fully try to address his behavior and the cheating and the scandals and stuff with Tammy after something happened? Did he process it right? Did he say sorry? Did he apologize for it? Did he go through his moments of trying to like have her understand I still love you, want to be with you? Did those things happen, right? And if they didn't happen, and you're complaining about the idea of her not giving you, and I'll just use one of the examples that I can remember just off the top of my head, of not giving you sex consistently as much as you want. Is that fair to say that? Right? Like, or do we have to be aware that she might have almost, I don't say disgust for you, but a dislike of you sexually because her trauma with you is very sexual, right? You cheated on her, you betrayed her trust in that situation. So is it fair to ask her to give you sex a lot if maybe she might feel triggered by that? Right? Like, is it fair to then, and then if you don't get it, then like you can go out and get it again, but that repeats a cycle. You know what I'm saying? And like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff you deal with in those situations is like where men don't really have the insights you kind of understand, like, I might have caused this, right? Or I had a big part to play in this situation I got to kind of deal with. And then we probably can move on from there when the healing starts. A lot of times what I see, and that's not just for them, but also for other couples, is a tit for tat. If you give me this, I want this immediately. It's not like you get this and let's let it breathe a little bit. It's like, no, tomorrow I need this from you. It's not fair either, So it's lots of like that, whatever it becomes hard relationship wise to manage and to deal with. That's a lot more common than you think it is. And I've had the same happen with couples that have been together for 3 years and couples that's been together for 30, like I said. So that becomes a very big part of the dynamic as well. is being able to understand your role, you do, and like what kind of maybe caused these situations, right? Or what have like influenced the situation to be the way it is. And not just ignoring that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that in many cases, the woman is actually crazy. However, I don't think most men realize, and I'll even say this about myself,
Mm,
not as much now,
yes.
because now I've grown and I've matured and I've worked on my healing and all of
Yes, yes.
that. Big shout to my queen and all. But I don't. So,
Mm,
yes, that woman is crazy. They are crazy, right? So, fellas, I'm with you. They crazy. However, fellas, I don't think we realize how we talk to women.
mm, mm. I think that's a very good point as well, right? Like, just because I was thinking about this as you talking about the idea of being crazy, right? Like, I'll give an anecdotal story. This is my friend, my frat brother in college, and obviously he was 18 to like 22 in the situation, but his behavior still kind of, I don't even know if he knew what he influenced to happen. It happened, right? So he got to school. We all got to school at the same time, basically. He met this girl, and I know they had a bond from the beginning, right? They both Guyanese. They both had a bond from that cultural background from the beginning.
Mhm.
And they started doing their thing. And the way my friend would kind of, I don't want to say disrespect her because I don't want to, but it was that. It was very much dismissive of her emotions, her feelings, right?
Yeah.
And mind you, like this continued for 4 years. So throughout the entirety of college, or whatever, on and off, they would hook up, separate, come back, hook up, whatever. To the point where like it was very clear, and we knew this, that this girl was in love with my friend. Like she was really into him. And he would always downplay it. He would dismiss it, whatever. He's like, oh, it's whatever, you know what I'm saying? Blah, blah. You know, I'm just having fun. I don't know what she thinking, whatever. And I'm like, man, like, do you not see like how this is like, adding up to a negative for you? To the point where this ended up, my friend moved to Chicago after college, pursue his degree, his master's degree, and his graduate degree in that scenario. And she followed him to Chicago. And then eventually one day out of nowhere, just like after a few years of him being there, she showed up to his doorstep and wanted an apology for all the stuff he had did to her basically over that 4 years in college. And he was like, that's crazy as hell. Like, why she coming to my place all of a sudden? This, and that. And I'm like, bro, but you understand, like, you made her think you was investing in her for 5, 6 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, so when she came to your doorstep, whatever, looking for like commitment or an idea of what you guys are or what this can be going forward, why are you surprised? She never got clarity. You know what I mean? Now, yes, like let me be fair in that situation. There are a lot of women who do take their past experiences with men and use those in their current relationships as well. And that kind of like dictates their behavior, or even like their responses to you, right? Like not even knowing if you trigger something in them, right? Like I know I have exes who have told me later on, whatever, you said this comment to me and it triggered me. I'm like, I said, wow, I didn't even know that got to you. I had no idea I was gonna hurt you. I'm sorry I hurt you, but I know that I triggered you, right? And that came me to that spot. So the reaction I'm getting, I'm like, what the hell is this coming from? But then I got to look back at it and say, okay, I said something that touched a nerve.
Mhm.
Does that mean it justifies her reaction? Of course not. But it also doesn't mean that I have to be aware of what I'm saying as well. To your point about what we say and how we do certain things,
Mhm.
right? Like I think sometimes we think that being honest is being blunt.
Mhm.
Everybody can't handle blunt or being direct, right? Everybody can't handle that either. Sometimes you gotta learn a way to say what you want to say, but say it in a way that's respectful of somebody who might need a level of compassion when you talk to them, who might need a level of patience when you talk to them, right? It's not gonna just be as simple as, hey, it's not working out, man. You know what I mean? And it's because you suck. Like it can't be that kind of thing, right? It got to be something where it's more, hey, I'm sorry this is working out for me, but I feel like emotionally we're in different places and communication wise we can't get on the same level. Something like that, where at least it's more real and it's based in reality, right? And it's able to talk to the person with hey, if that person was working on themselves afterwards, guess what? They can do that too. And they
Mhm.
might say something to you like, oh, well, you know what? You made it hard for me with this. And I can work on myself in that way too. To me, and I've always felt this way, every relationship you can learn from or grow from. And one of the things I think is so, I won't say wrong, because it's one way to put it, but I think it's so short sighted sometimes. It's the idea when people kind of break up, they want to just erase their partner and their relationship they had before. That's not always good for you. A lot of times that
Mhm.
means you're losing what really made you feel off in the relationship before, right? And that same thing might happen to you again the next one, unless you address it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all need love, man.
Yeah.
Listen, we're all hurting people, hurting beings,
1000%.
and
1000%.
and trying to figure out. And I mean, now I'm all grown up and all mature and all, but
Mm,
I think back to some of my relationships in my early 30s and even in my 20s, my
mhm,
late 20s,
mhm,
and then I didn't realize it, right? I would just say, man, that woman has a mouth on her and she's rude and blah blah blah. But then when I think about it, what was really happening was I was talking to her
mm,
blunt and raw,
mm,
which can be deemed as rude,
mhm.
and she was responding to me in the same way, and we were both, you know, who the hell is she talking to? Who is he talking? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and just doing all this. Um, but in our heads, we don't realize what we're saying. You know, we don't hear ourselves.
Mhm,
So we hear them
mhm,
talking to us, and we're like, hold on, like, who, you know, but we don't hear ourselves. And over the
mhm,
years, I've had to realize, man, is that how I sound?
mm,
Like, is that how I say things to people?
mhm,
Oh, so would I like someone to say that to me? No,
mhm.
absolutely not. Even though I mean well, right? But it's just how you say things, and then we've all been through our own traumas or whatever. So it's you saying something that may be raw or blunt, plus the experiences that she had went through
Mhm,
that just raised that to a whole nother level.
mhm,
And you're like, I don't know why she's crying right now.
mhm.
And you just calling her like overly, like overly,
Emotional. Yeah.
yeah. And
Mhm. It is so, it's so funny how you put that, right? Because I think, especially in your 20s and your like, I'll say really your mid 20s, late 20s, whatever. I think there's an air. I won't speak for everybody like that. I'll speak for those I think who have an idea of like, I'll say this. I think if you were in your 20s and you had like, let's say you were good looking to parents wise, whatever, and you had like a career to some degree, right? A lot of ways when you're in that position, you feel like you the ish, basically, like about a term, basically, right? You feel like you nothing can stop you. You on top of the
Mhm,
world. So a lot
mhm,
of times you talk to people, you talk from that perspective, right? Especially when you're dating somebody. And I remember like thinking in my 20s, and I like to your point about stuff you would say. There's stuff I remember I said in the midst of me being honest and blunt and raw that now I cringe at because I'm like, damn, that was messed up. You know what I'm
mhm.
saying? Like I was way too blown down or whatever. I got to bring that back a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I had to learn from me like that was my easy way of trying to disintegrate stuff. Right? Like me being so blunt led to whatever quick cuts because it's like all right now I don't want to deal with you for a little while. You know what I mean? So I was like all right, like and that helped me better to avoid commitment at the time, which is something I struggled with at the time was commitment based situations and really committing to somebody fully. So that was something I had to deal with, right? But at the time, I didn't know that was driving my behavior. I thought it was just, me being respectfully honest, right? Because I was told when I was, growing up, whatever, by my other guy friends, OGs, whatever, the way you do a girl is be honest with them, be direct, whatever, right? And they respect you more for it, and they probably even get you more in that situation for it because you're being real with them and not you're not treating them like, you know, You're not sticking around. You're not trying to hop behind their back, whatever. You just treat them like a person, right? Which to a degree is right. Is very honest. Like the honesty I gave some people was great, and it did come back and like help us, create different dynamic relationship wise where we can be friends or even, even try to get at different points later on. But everybody's not the same, right? So everybody can't deal with that level of stuff, right? And so you're talking about traumas and triggers and stuff. One of the things that like is very, prevalent in most like minority communities is the idea like you're raised in an environment where a lot of times you're not really given the tools to know how to really emote correctly, how to really express emotions correctly. So when you deal with somebody, you're trying to basically like do this thing you think is right, which you've been taught most of your life, but that way of probably emoting love is highly inappropriate or really works for your family. It doesn't work for somebody else in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that person might feel like, oh, I'm not getting the love back from the person I want. I'm not, I might feel stunned, right? So one of the things, people talk about a lot, it's one of the buzz books people mention a lot is like Five Languages of Love, right? It's a book where I guess that the love language has become a very hot term. The idea of it, what it means for people, right? The actual basis of it, whatever, is these 5 different languages that, he characterizes in this book. I can't remember the author right now. Don't kill me on that. Hopefully people on the YouTube comments will give me. But like as far as the actual basis of it is receiving gifts, or giving gifts, it's words of affirmation, it's touch, it's a quality time, and it's acts of service, right?
Yes.
Most of the time in that scenario, especially in like most Caribbean or minority households, you're taught to show love through acts of service. That's one of the first, like you do the chores, you do the stuff around the house, where you do all that kind of stuff as a kid to show that you love your parents, show that you obeying your parents, right? So that's kind of a built-in way we already learn how to show love just from growing up that we don't really know how to like fully understand. Everybody doesn't really do that, right? Like I've met and dated some very messy women. So in that situation, acts of service for them might not be in the idea of like, let's say in a traditional meaning, like cooking her, right? Or doing stuff like that. It might be, taking your favorite restaurant or something like that, whatever, for you, or picking up a hat for you, whatever, when they saw something nice for you at the store or something like that, whatever, right? That kind of falls in the gifts too. But like it's a different way of looking at things as opposed to what we actually do, which is kind of just think in our own way of looking at stuff in our pathway and make that the correct pathway as opposed to like being able to branch out and understand it's not that black and white.
Yeah, it's never black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many layers to it. Um, but yeah, and I've done several pieces on the love languages,
Mm-hmm.
and though it seems simple, right? Because the author, and it's not just one author, it's been
Yes, it's multiple. Yeah.
several, but they made it simple, right? They broke it down into 5 categories.
Mm-hmm.
However, the personal touch to you may be way different than Mercedes from Hialeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for that stereotype.
I got you.
But it might be talking, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody hears personal touch, they're thinking the bedroom only.
Yep.
And then someone else is like, no, walking in the mall and holding my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, what? Like, are we in high school? Like why are we doing that? Right? So it's so many layers.
Well, it's funny how you put it, right? Like, and I guess we can still topic in general, right? Sex becomes a very important thing for people in different ways. I do think that at least what I've typically seen or experienced, that men tend to value it more than women in certain relationship dynamics, as far as the impacts of it and how much they need certain things. Women tend to be more open-minded and more agreeable to kind of, at least in my experience as well, and more open-minded and being more open to different things and actually value an emotional connection more than they do the physical connection in certain ways. Yes, physical is important too, but their basis has to be in the idea that there's something here as opposed to just a wham bam kind of thank you ma'am scenario. And I think a lot of the times because of that, we kind of get caught up in different things. Like to your point, right? Like if I meet somebody and the basis of our relationship is sex or physical touch, I'm not going to like really, prioritize the idea of creating emotional connection with you or understanding what also makes you feel loved as a person, right? I'm gonna just focus on this part of it and make that the biggest thing to work on.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times that's not really realistic, right? That can be based on everything you do in that situation. Is it important? Hell yeah, it's important. Like you can be happy in that realm too, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Both partners. But in that situation, it also goes to like what really kind of moves that for you, right? Is it just the idea of the person being into sex? Is it the person being into you? Is it the idea of having a emotional connection that makes you feel loved and valued and cherished? Is it, is it more based on the idea of like you're trying to be open minded to different things? Like, all that kind of stuff plays a factor and a role in it that people again don't really explore. One of the things I always find so interesting to me, even now, and I deal with this even now as anecdotally, whatever too, is how much people don't talk about sex because it feels weird, right? Like even when you're dating somebody, to me, I don't think it's weird at all that conversation. I think it's actually needed sometimes, right? To even like go that route, to go in those situations, so I talk about it, right? To like understand what I need from you or what I want from you, right? To me feel about you as a partner, me feel wanted as a partner. And then can we do those things? Are those things okay with you? Do you like that kind of stuff? Or if not, then is there something else we can do to kind of compromise? And people don't do the conversations. They just kind of go into it and thinking like, all right, it's gonna be whatever. And we gonna get into it and be fun. And then when they leave the situation, they're like, oh, this wasn't that satisfying, or it was all right. They're like surprised otherwise. It was all right. I'm like, well, you gotta communicate about those kind of things, right? You gotta understand the partner wants. It's not just doing what you want to do or acting what you want to act, right? It's also understanding that person's needs. Another thing I was going to your point also about affection. I think that also comes down to like being a cultural basis and a thing you're taught. Going to South Florida, I know you those two blades, right? Like I remember middle school, the disgust guys would give you for doing certain actions with girls, right? Like, are you kissing her? What? Yeah, that's my girlfriend, bro. Like what's the issue, right? But some guys will see that as being too submissive or letting in too much in that scenario, right? You're supposed to be as a man and want to just beat it down and keep it moving. And that was a very antiquated view of what it was when I was growing up in middle school and high school. Right? I don't know if you experienced that same thing, but that's kind of what I was, all my boys around me, whatever, play football and stuff in high school and in that same mess, right? It was never talk about pleasing her. It was talk about me getting my stuff in. You know what I'm saying? Me like the man in that situation. So I think all that plays a role in it too, right? And I even have clients now who are younger who perpetuate those same kind of ideologies. And I'm like, man, like, you gotta get out of that, bro. Like, that's not gonna help you going forward in that situation if you can make all about what you want to get as opposed to what your partner wants. But yeah, that definitely happens a lot.
And again, that's why therapy is so needed, because I don't want to say at the root, but actually, someone asks you where overall we are selfish, right? Do you feel where do you think the origin of us being so selfish is? Do you think it's at the root or more so on the surface?
You mean men or you mean in relationships? What do you mean by that exactly?
So us as human beings.
Okay. That's a hard question. So I'll put it like this, right? I'll just use relationships as a kind of an example now, an example in this scenario, right? I think as you go through that experience of dating people, right? And let's say at first you might date somebody and you don't really have the idea of what you're asking for, what you really want, right? You have an image of what you think you want. So you follow that image. A lot of the times the image you're given is based on the image you think that is happy. It makes you feel happy. It makes you feel good, right? So in my image relationships is that the girl should be, on me all the time, whatever, call my phone 24/7, wanting to have sex with me all the time, kind of thing. And that becomes kind of my default and what I expect to happen going forward. You get me? And then is I might get that at one point in my life, right? I might get that whatever when I'm 18, 19, 20, 21. The issue I also see is that people don't adjust. So I might have this selfish need at this point in time and think that's okay to have. And then nobody ever told me that was different, or that was wrong, or that I shouldn't have this kind of ideology. And you kind of just go on having the same kind of thought process that perpetuates as you get older, right? And I think there's always a point where people learn relationships wise, like, okay, this has to be more of a compromise. And what I mean by that, whatever is putting your partner first in a lot of ways, right? And not obviously not above like needs you need for basic needs for yourself, but in other ways that you might feel comfortable doing, right? Interest level situations, right? Like stuff like that really can help just make stuff sustainable. Easy example. I might want to watch sports or a basketball game on the TV. I might want to watch this because I'm really looking forward to this game. The Heat playing, they playing, the Bucks or whatever. I'm into this. I want to watch. And at the same time, she might want to watch a movie with me, whatever that's romantic comedy or something. But I'm pushing my narrative first and what I want to do in that situation, as opposed to like giving her the ability to kind of like do this and not realizing that I can get so many points from that. Like, or I can get so much like understanding from that, right? Or even like just more love from that acts. You get me? Like if I was able to put my need aside, my one aside, actually my need one aside for basketball at that time to basically like make sure my partner feels heard, attended to and loved, I might actually get more relationship wise from that than I would just watching the game. But people don't think that way. And the other thing is people focus on the negative a lot too, right? So if I'm not getting what I want, I look at it as this is a negative for me. This is bad for me, right? Like, so then it makes me want what I want even more, right? So like to go back to the Rex and Tammy thing. At the point Rex had got to because of all the resentment over the time he had built for not voicing how he felt and feeling like his needs weren't being met, he wanted it all to be met right in that moment, right?
Mhm.
Like damn the time it take her to understand it. I need my stuff right now, this second. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, but that's not fair to her, and that's being
No.
very selfish in that situation, right? And that's a 67-year-old man. It's not like I'm talking about a kid. You get me? Like that's how much that can be, relationship wise, or even in you as a person as you get older. It really depends on how you kind of deal with relationships and how you voice and what you get in those situations. And understand like, okay, like I might not get everything I want or all I want, but I might get most of it, right? I will never forget this. My professor for couples therapy in my grad school course, he had mentioned something. He said, people seem to think my partner has everything in them, like 100% of what you want gonna be in somebody. That's never realistic. That's never possible. 100% of what you want is not realistic. That's just a pipe dream, right?
Hmm.
If you can get 75 to 80% of what you want from somebody, that's a keeper.
Hmm.
And that's what he said to me. That was 10 years ago. 11 years ago now. He said it back. And I never forgot it. I've never forgotten it because I think that is a very true statement. People tend to think I want this and I should get this. And it's like, no, like it's not, nobody's just like no person is a puppet for you. Nobody's going to picture what you want 100%, right? So if you find a partner that has 75% of that, 80% of it, you know what I mean? Where you can still have a good time with this person, but okay, they might not be as attentive as you want them to be. They might not be as pleased you want them to be, but they give you, a lot of affection. They give you a lot of support. They got their own stuff. They're independent. They're also if you actually value outside of the stuff I just mentioned earlier. It's okay to take that and be happy with it too and appreciate it and like kind of value that because guess what's gonna happen? If I have somebody right now at 80% of what I want most of the time, we can talk about it and grow as a couple. I might get to it in a couple as 85%, 90% of that. You know what I mean? Which is even better. But if I start with the idea that I need to find this already, that's gonna be really hard, man. That makes it really difficult then to actually like connect with somebody on a deeper level, as opposed to just kind of thinking about what your needs, or what your wants and needs are being met. If your wants and needs are being met.
As you're talking,
Mm-hmm.
I realize more and more that I need therapy again.
And look, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, let me just say
No,
this too.
no,
Like,
no.
I don't know if your demographic of your listeners is much, Blaze, but I will say this, right? You don't have to be crazy or outlandish or have a relationship that's like at its last legs to go to therapy, right? You can do that, whatever. In the midst of you just kind of trying to want to look at yourself a little bit, or even if you just want to have it in perpetual state, therapy can help anybody at any point. I always think it's good to keep it going, whatever, right? Or even have a checkup every few years or so. Nothing wrong with that in that situation either, because your life changes, right? So my perception of what I might have had and went through when I was 25 is not different at 30, or different at 35, or different at 40, right? So it doesn't mean that okay, I'm losing or I'm failing as a client or I'm regressing. It just means I got to adjust to my new normal, on the reality, to like what I'm actually going through. Right, differences in my life now versus what it was when I was 25 or 30. So all those kind of things, whatever, I think are part of that. And look, I'll advocate for anybody. Go get therapy if you want it. Go get it if you feel anxious about it or hesitant. I know it can be kind of hard in that situation. I'm not saying every therapist is going to be your best friend or somebody you want to talk to, but you can do some due diligence and look into that, and you'll probably find somebody who actually can connect with whatever and who can probably help you.
Your therapist should probably not be your best friend.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. People don't think that way all the time, though, even. Conversation is hard for people. You know what I mean? Even relationship-wise, it's hard for people, right? That's why it comes out a lot of times so ugly. Because when we confront somebody, usually relationship-wise, we confront them in the midst of a fight, a trigger. Mm-hmm. It's not in the midst of just us being calm and being like, hey, last week this thing that happened, like, can we talk about it for a second? I really felt emasculated, or I felt unheard, or I felt dismissed in this scenario, and I was like, what's going on? We don't do that. We do it in the moment. When we fired up and angry, which then you really kind of fighting with a wall, because there's nothing going to change in that situation. Mm-hmm. But yeah, conversation is good. It can be very good. You just need the right situation, the right person to kind of be involved in with you,
Yeah. After this episode, I'm going to the altar, man. I got a lot to. I have a lot to process, and I'm realizing that I have suppressed a lot. And my queen that's listening, baby, you are perfect. So this is not a reflection on you. This is me. This is my internal struggle. No, but seriously. But it's just here having this conversation further reminds me that there is still work to be done. And for the mountains that I have planned to move, for the lives I plan to impact, for the world domination, right, that I am plotting on, for all of that, I have to continually renew my mind and continually heal. So there are definitely some things that need to be released. So
it's weird, man. Like, I really think as you get to a certain age, 30s and 40s, whatever, everybody has at least one or two breakups in their life that probably had a major impact on them, right, in some way. Whether it's because of time, investment you put in the person, the stage relationship you were at, whatever it is in that situation, it's there, right? And a lot of times we don't address those kind of emotions and feelings afterwards, how much it can impact you, or even after losses. One of the things that people don't tend to kind of like downplay, especially in our community, is the idea of death, right? Like death becomes very almost like expected, and yeah, we do our thing, we do reception, we do our funeral, we do our viewing. But once it's over, we kind of just let it, kind of act like nothing happened, basically. We go back to regular life. Mm-hmm. As opposed to looking at it as, we just lost somebody who could be close to us or had influence on us or had an impact on us that we're not seeing fully right now. Mm-hmm. And able to understand that, right? Like, it's in the relationship wise. We might go through a breakup and realize, like, okay, it's, this happened, but maybe it wasn't of my own accord, or maybe it wasn't something that I saw coming. And all of a sudden, I'm left with these emotions of like, damn, like, did I mess it up? Did I cause this issue? Whatever. We just not working out. Like, a lot of times we don't really look at those things, and then they kind of end up in these states of codependent thinking, where they look for basically the next relationship to kind of just latch on to. Let me not think about what's going on right now. It's making me feel anguish. Let me just focus on the person I'm with. And sometimes that's okay. It might work out, but other times that can actually lead to like a really negative interaction fully all the way around. You know what I mean? Like, I'll give you another situation with my clients. These two are, let's call them Troy and Monica. All right. So Troy and Monica were married for 22 years, and they were both whatever in their 40s. And Troy had met Monica as a young man. He was 24, she was 22. He met her when she already had, I think, 2 kids. He had no kids. He had just broke up with his fiance. He was engaged, whatever, and stuff. They just broke up. And maybe like a year or 2 afterwards, he ended up meeting Monica, committing to Monica, investing in Monica on full speed ahead. But they both didn't do the work on themselves prior to really process their breakups, right? The fact that Monica left something that was abusive and she had to give to this person. The fact that whatever, he was not making a situation where he just got an engagement, right? He was just engaged to somebody. And now I'm with somebody else new and trying to invest the person heavily. And then they go on like this for 20 years to the point where Monica builds this level of resentment towards him because she never really dealt with her emotional reactions to things that happened before, right? Like, one of the things people don't really understand either is how prevalent or how common emotional abuse and verbal abuse is relationship-wise either. It happens all the time. People don't even know it sometimes when it happens, but it happens a lot, right? Like, technically, stuff like judging and being ultra critical of somebody is verbal abuse. You know what I mean? So think about relationship-wise, how often you might judge your partner or criticize them for something you're doing in that situation, right? Think about how it makes a person feel. It destroys intimacy. That's what verbal abuse does. It destroys intimacy. So now, if 20 years of me dealing with you and you telling me how I'm not this, how I'm not that, how you got to take care of this, you got to take care of all the kids, whatever the situation is, you know what I mean? And my resentment towards you is growing, and my intimacy, my want for intimacy, which was lessened, is basically depleted now. It's gone. You know what I mean? And we had to help them basically get a divorce. You know what I'm saying? Because that's at the point it was at. But then the crazy part about that, Blaze, which is the reason why I was on this in the first place, is Troy didn't do the work on his initial engagement partner, right? His initial fiance. When he broke up with Monica, guess who was single? And guess what happened?
Whoa.
You know what I'm saying? So, like, when you don't do those kind of things, and that's 20 years. That's 20 years in between that time period, right? Where he has 2 kids now, and even she has the 2 kids also with her. So when they came back together, it was like, oh wow, like you got 2 kids, I got 2 kids. Oh wow, I ain't seen you forever. Yeah, it's been a minute. Blah, blah. And they got right back into it. Right back into it.
I just got goosebumps. Oh.
But that's the thing is like
plot twist.
sometimes, and that's the other part though, right? Like, do I think that was a great idea for him? I don't know, because he didn't do his work after breaking up with Monica, right? And that left a whole different emotional impact on him now, right? So yeah, like I might have found my initial partner who I was still in love with when we first broke up. But I can bring in my baggage from my relationship I had just now, and this also, if I'm not careful. You get me? So that kind of stuff people don't really kind of realize or understand. Like, you gotta do the work, man. You gotta do the work. If you don't do the work, it's gonna end up haunting you the rest of your life.
Woo! That right there, yeah. Absolutely, man. Dustin, whew. Jeez. Those listening to the audio, you might feel this because the energy from this story is just hit me hard. So it would be interesting if you feel the same way just listening to this audio. Write it in the comments. Write a dynamic review about the podcast. Any of those, or shoot me a DM. Any of those, truly, because man, that right there, to the point I don't even want to gloss over it.
Come on.
I think right there is exactly the exclamation point. Right there. In closing, if you had to give advice, and I know as therapists we steer away from that phrase or that word.
Yes.
We don't fix people and we don't give advice.
Yes.
So I get it. Is there maybe one word or one phrase
Mm.
that you think is important for the people moving forward in this moment?
Mm. In-depth communication. I feel like that basically, right? Like, I really feel like a lot of relationships will work if people just kind of voice how they felt earlier on, right? Or dealt with those things earlier on. The fact that a lot of times people kind of tend to internalize or hold it in or use it as fuel to like be angry, whatever, it doesn't help anything. It just makes it harder. And if they learn in that situation to kind of like voice how you felt with their partner, even, and I know sometimes it might lead to fight. I know all that kind of good stuff might happen. I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, that might be better than going through the whole like resentment of not talking about it for X amount of months, years, whatever, and then having it come up later on in a much bigger issue, a much bigger fight. So I will always advocate for in-depth communication. Even when you think you're being basic, go lower. Break it down even a step more than that. You know, I think that will help anybody, hopefully. Relationships, romantically, or in family.
Yeah. Agreed. If you're listening to this podcast and maybe you've been holding back, maybe you've been avoiding having that talk, right, with your partner. Maybe this is the confirmation you needed. Maybe this is the reminder that you needed. Maybe it's not even a partner. Maybe it's a family member.
Mm.
Maybe maybe it's your child or your parent.
Mm. Yeah.
Communication is very important. Is very necessary, and we tend to hold things in, and we tend to assume, and we feel that we know exactly what that person is thinking, or we know exactly why they're doing the thing that they're doing, or why they're doing the thing that they're not doing. And the assumptions and the judgment most times just leads to more trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
be open, be real, and stop being scared, right?
Really
Face
important
the
way to put it.
ball. Yeah.
I
As he
agree.
mentioned, as our guest mentioned, many times it's better to face the music right then and there, than to suppress it because you don't want to hurt their feelings, and then all of a sudden it's 5 years past and you can't stand this person. You resent them for so
Yep.
many things, and it's
Mm-hmm.
built layers upon layers,
Mm-hmm.
and we've made it so much worse. So be respectful. You don't want to tell them that they ain't, that they suck and all that. You know what I mean?
Yes,
But
exactly.
it's better to address it now than later.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Dustin, I thank you so much for your time, for your willingness, for those stories, for those real stories. These ain't lifetime stories, people.
Yeah,
These
real stuff. This is real
these
stuff.
are real stories, are real things that we have gone through, that we are going through, and some of us a glimpse of what we may be going through
If
in
I'm
the
not careful.
future.
Yeah.
So work on yourselves, grow, um, truly get to know your partners, your circle, your family, um, as we all heal together on this unhealthy earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, man. Woo! You can find this episode right here. Will be available, the video, on the YouTube channel, the Blazing Line Podcast, in about 24 hours, as well as the audio will also be available in about 24 hours on all your major streaming platforms. Like I said, your Breaker, your Radio One, your Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, so on. And stay tuned for next month. We have a whole nother theme coming up. I will reveal that later. And we also have a bonus episode. You know, we do these bonus episodes every now and then. We have a bonus episode which we airing tomorrow. With somebody who you may know. He's no stranger to the podcast. He's been on the podcast before, and he'll be dropping some major value on all of us. I think last time he came on the podcast, I had to hold back tears because it was real. Definitely real. So you don't want to miss that as well tomorrow. And again, I appreciate you, Dustin. I appreciate my viewers, my podcast family. If you take nothing else from this podcast, just know that teamwork. Teamwork. I know you've been hurt before and you want to do it all by yourself, and you're self-made and you're independent and all that, and I get it. I understand you. We got trust issues out here.
Yeah.
Get it. However, you can accomplish so much by yourself, but you can accomplish so much more with the right team. Absolutely.
Very true.
Yes. That concludes episode 91. This was the Blaze the Line podcast. As we always end our podcast with peace and love.
Excellent. Thank you.